Shalom, friend. Tonight we count day 46 of the 50 days between Passover and Pentecost. And since we're in the last 10 days of counting the Omer, we're thinking about the 10 commandments. Yesterday I commented on the 6th commandment, you shall not commit murder. But tonight I want to call our attention to the 7th commandment, which is found in Exodus 20, verse 14. You shall not commit adultery. Obviously, sexual sin is far more common than murder. Violations of the 7th commandment, then, are more common than violations of the 6th commandment. But this 7th commandment is a very heavy commandment. The God of our Bible has some very clear standards when it comes to sexuality. In the ancient world, there were always others who had very similar standards. Remember Joseph. He was a slave in Potiphar's house, and Potiphar's wife threw herself on Joseph. And Joseph responded by saying, "How could I do such a wicked thing and sin against God?" She got angry. She falsely accused Joseph to her husband. And then her husband had Joseph thrown in prison. Obviously, her husband had a clear sense of what is right and what is wrong sexually. Or remember the story of Abraham, when Abraham lied to Abimelech. Abraham told Abimelech, "Hey, Sarah is my sister." So Abimelech took Sarah into his harem. And then God came to Abimelech in a dream. And God said to Abimelech, "You're as good as a dead man, because that woman's married." And Abimelech said, "But Lord, Abraham said that she was his sister, and she also said, 'He's my brother,' and I haven't even touched her yet." And God said, "I know, that's why I'm warning you. And you better return her now, and if you do, you'll be okay. Otherwise, Abimelech, you're burnt toast." Now, those are my words, but that's pretty close to what God actually says in Genesis chapter 20. So then Abimelech goes to Abraham, and he says, "Abraham, why would you do this to me?" So obviously, Abimelech understood that an adulterous affair was morally wrong. On the other hand, the ancient world was full of religious cults where prostitution and all forms of sexual sin were widespread. And it's a lot like that in our world today. Harvey Weinstein, Jeffrey Epstein, Anthony Weiner, and the list goes on. Law enforcement says that in the year 2018, there were 127,258 reported rapes in America. And how many were not reported? Every 73 seconds, an American is sexually assaulted. Children are victimized at a much higher rate than adults. 1 in 3 girls are sexually abused before the age of 18. 1 in 5 boys and 30% of all children who are abused, there is no report on them. These are hard statistics. But God says, "Thou shalt not commit adultery." God is very serious about sexual sin. Jack Hayford wrote a book entitled Fatal Attraction. And the subtitle is Why Sex Sins Are Worse Than Others. Now in this 7th commandment, "Thou shalt not commit adultery," God uses a specific Hebrew word, na'af. And this word refers to sexual intercourse with the wife or the betrothed of another person. There are other words that address other kinds of sexual sins, such as zana, which means to commit fornication. And then, of course, there's the story of Sodom and Gomorrah, from which we get our English word sodomy, describing a particular kind of sexual sin. And even though the word for adultery that is used in the 7th commandment is specific about the breaking of the marriage covenant, God is actually very serious about all sexual sin. Friend, not only is sexual sin the breaking of a covenant with a spouse, but it's actually also the breaking of a covenant with God. After all, we are the bride of Christ. Now, by God's grace, since I gave my life to Jesus, I've never physically touched another woman other than my wife. Don and I have been married over 37 years, and our first kiss was when the preacher said, "You may kiss your bride." But God knows how grievously I have been tempted, and He knows how much my heart and my eyes have strayed. Friend, I want to encourage you, do whatever it takes to walk in purity, because it is worth it. In a moment, we're going to bless God with our mouths, but let's also bless God with our bodies. The Apostle Paul wrote in 1 Corinthians chapter 6, at the end of the chapter, "Flee from sexual immorality." In other words, run like Joseph did. He went on to say, all other sins that a person commits are outside his body, but whoever sins sexually sins against his own body. Do you not know that your bodies are the temples of the Holy Spirit who's in you, whom you have received from God? You're not your own. You were bought with a price. Therefore, honor God with your bodies. Now, one way that we can bless God with our bodies is by lifting our hands and opening our mouths. So let's bless him together on this 46th day of the 50 days to Pentecost. Blessed are you, Lord our God, King of the universe, who has sanctified us with his commandments and commanded us concerning the counting of the Omer. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al seferat ha-Omer. Then let's count the Omer on this 46th day by simply saying, today is 46 days, which is 6 weeks and 4 days of the Omer. Or Hayom Shisha Ve'arba'im Yom Shehem Shisha Shavuot Ve'arba'a Yamim LeOmer. Again, today is 46 days, which is 6 weeks and 4 days of the Omer. I hope to see you tomorrow. God bless you.